The key was so small that my daughter almost threw it away. Instead, she put it on my desk and asked me one question. Dad, why would Mom hide a key inside her closet? I looked at the little brass key in her palm. I didn't know what it opened. But 3 days later, I would discover that my wife had been keeping something from me for almost 12 years. And the worst part wasn't what was behind that locked door. It was who had the key to it. Before I tell you what happened, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. If you enjoy emotional stories about family secrets, betrayal, and unexpected twists, you're in the right place. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 45 years old, and I live with my wife, Melissa, and our 16-year-old daughter, Ava, in a quiet neighborhood outside Raleigh, North Carolina. I worked as an electrical contractor. Melissa was an accountant for a small medical company. From the outside, we were ordinary. We weren't rich. We didn't have a perfect marriage. But after 21 years together, I believed I knew my wife. That belief lasted until a rainy Tuesday afternoon in October. I had come home early because a client canceled an appointment. The house was unusually quiet. Ava was upstairs cleaning her room. Melissa was still at work. I was making coffee when I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. Ava appeared in the kitchen holding something between her fingers. Dad? Yeah? She walked over and placed a tiny brass key on the counter. I found this. I looked at it. Where? In Mom's closet. I smiled. Probably an old key. Your mom keeps everything. Ava didn't smile. That's what I thought. She pulled out her phone. Then I found this. She showed me a photograph. It was a picture of Melissa's closet. One of the wooden shelves had been moved. Behind it was a small metal box attached to the wall. My smile disappeared. What is that? I don't know. Did you open it? No. She held up the key. But I think this opens it. I stared at the photograph. Why were you in your mother's closet? Ava looked embarrassed. She asked me to find an old winter coat. Okay. I moved some boxes. And I noticed the shelf was loose. She hesitated. Dad, there was something else. What? She lowered her voice. There were envelopes. What kind? I don't know. What did they say? Ava looked at me. They had your name on them. My stomach tightened. My name? She nodded. Your full name. I took the key from her hand. For some reason, it suddenly felt much heavier than it should have. Did your mother see you? No. Are you sure? Yes. Then don't mention this to her. Ava looked surprised. Why? Because I want to understand what werewolf dealing with first. She nodded. Then she walked upstairs. I remained in the kitchen, staring at that little brass key. For 21 years, Melissa and I had shared almost everything. Bank accounts, passwords, family vacations, medical emergencies, arguments, plans for retirement. But apparently there was one room in her life I had never been invited into. And suddenly, I needed to know why. That evening, Melissa came home at 6:40. She kissed me. Hey, how was your day? Fine. She put her purse on the chair. Then she noticed the look on my face. What? Nothing. She smiled. You're staring at me. Long day. Very. She walked into the kitchen. I watched her pour herself a glass of water. Then she said something completely ordinary. I need to clean my closet this weekend. My heart stopped for half a second. I forced a laugh. Why? It's getting crowded. Need help? No. She said it too quickly. Then she turned away. That tiny reaction bothered me more than the key itself. Because Melissa wasn't nervous. She was careful. That night, after she went to bed, I sat alone in my office. I searched through old family records. Nothing. Then I opened an old photo album. Ava had been 3 years old in most of the pictures. Melissa and I looked happy. Young. Normal. I turned another page. And stopped. There was a photograph ID almost forgotten. It had been taken 12 years earlier. Melissa was standing outside a small brick building. I was behind the camera. She had her arm around Ava. But there was another person in the photograph. A man, standing several feet away. His face was partially hidden by the shadow of the building. I stared at him. Something about him looked familiar. Then I noticed the date written beneath the photograph. October 14th, 2014. Exactly 12 years ago. I looked at the key sitting beside my laptop. Then at the photograph. And suddenly, I remembered something Melissa had told me that same year. She had said she spent that entire afternoon at her sister's house. But this photograph proved she hadn't. I leaned back in my chair. For the first time in 21 years, I wondered what else had my wife lied about. And why had she kept a key hidden in her closet for 12 years? I wasn't ready to confront her. Not yet. Because before I asked Melissa a single question, I needed to find out what that key opened. The next morning, I woke up before Melissa. I barely slept. That photograph kept running through my mind. October 14th, 2014. The man standing beside the building. The lie about where Melissa had been that afternoon. And the key. I slipped out of bed without waking her and went downstairs. The brass key was still inside the drawer where I'd hidden it. I stared at it for several seconds. Then I called my old friend Mark. He had worked in property management for years and knew almost every storage facility around Raleigh. I showed him the photograph. Do you recognize this building? He studied it. Maybe. Look at the door. He zoomed in. There was a small blue number beside the entrance. 217, Mark frowned. That looks like one of those older private storage facilities. Can you find out which one? I can try. I didn't tell him why. 20 minutes later, he called me back. Daniel, I think I found it. My heart started beating faster. Where? Old Mill Storage. It's about 15 miles from your house. Does it still exist? Yes. Unit 217? There was a pause. That's the strange part. What? The facility changed owners twice. But according to the current records, Unit 217 is still active. I gripped the phone. Under whose name? Mark hesitated. Melissa Carter. I closed my eyes. My wife had maintained a storage unit for 12 years. And I'd never known about it. I didn't go there immediately. That would have been stupid. Instead, I waited until Melissa left for work. Then I drove to the storage facility. The place looked almost exactly like the photograph. Same brick office. Same narrow driveway. Rows of metal doors stretched behind a tall fence. I walked into the office. An older woman sat behind the counter. Can I help you? I think my wife rents a unit here. She typed something into her computer. Name? Melissa Carter. Her expression changed slightly. Yes. Unit 217? She nodded. I need access. Are you listed on the account? No. Then I'm afraid I can't let you in. I expected that. Can you at least tell me when the unit was rented? She looked at the screen. October 2014. My chest tightened. Exactly 12 years ago. Does she still pay for it? Yes. How? Automatic payment. Has she accessed it recently? The woman looked uncomfortable. I can't give you private access records. I nodded. Understood. I walked back to my truck. I had answers now, but they created even more questions. Why would Melissa keep a storage unit for 12 years? Why had she never mentioned it? And most importantly, what was inside? That evening, I watched Melissa carefully. She came home around 7. Ava was doing homework at the kitchen table. Melissa walked over and kissed her forehead. How was school? Fine. Then she looked at me. How was your day? Busy. She smiled. Mine too. I almost asked her about the storage unit. Instead, I said, do you remember 2014? She froze. Only for a second. But I noticed. What about it? Nothing. I was looking through old photographs last night. She laughed nervously. You and those old pictures. I found one from October. Her smile disappeared. Which one? The one outside the brick building. She stared at me. Then she said something I wasn't expecting. I don't remember that. You're in it. I know. You said you spent that day with your sister. Melissa looked away. I may have remembered wrong. 12 years is a long time. Exactly. Then she walked upstairs. I didn't follow her. Because I had just seen something in her expression. Fear. Real fear. Later that night, Ava came into my office. She closed the door behind her. Dad, what's wrong? Mom asked me something. What? She asked if I had been in her closet. My stomach dropped. What did you say? I said no. Good. Ava looked nervous. Dad, I think she knows about the key. I leaned back in my chair. Did she say anything else? No. Then Ava reached into her pocket. She pulled out another envelope. I found this behind the shelf. My name was written across the front. But this time, there was something else. A date. October 14th, 2014. I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a single photograph. I looked at it. And suddenly, everything I believed about my family began to fall apart. Because the man from the old photograph wasn't a stranger. I knew exactly who he was. And I haven't seen him in 12 years. I stared at the photograph for what felt like a full minute. The man standing beside Melissa wasn't a stranger. It was David Carter, Melissa's younger brother, my brother-in-law. And as far as I knew, David had been living in Colorado since 2013. I'd spoken to him a handful of times over the years, mostly during holidays. But in 2014, Melissa had told me David had moved permanently to Denver, and barely came back to North Carolina. Yet there he was, standing beside my wife, on the exact day she had told me she was somewhere else. I looked at Ava. Where did you find this? Behind a shelf. Did you read anything? She shook her head. I thought it was private. I appreciated that. I folded the photograph and put it back inside the envelope. Don't tell your mother about this. Ava looked worried. Are you going to be okay? I forced a smile. Yeah, but I wasn't. Because something had just become clear. The secret wasn't about another man. At least, not in the way ID feared. It was about something Melissa had been hiding for 12 years. And David was involved. The next morning, I called him. He answered after several rings. Daniel? Hey, David. There was a long pause. What's up? I found an old photograph. Silence. What photograph? One from October 14th, 2014. He didn't answer. I continued. You're standing beside Melissa. His breathing changed. Where did you get that? That's what I'm trying to figure out. Another silence. Then he said quietly, you need to ask Melissa. I already did. What did she say? She said she doesn't remember. David sighed. Of course she did. That sentence bothered me. What does that mean? I can't talk about this over the phone. Then tell me where you are. They'll be in Raleigh tomorrow. He hung up. I stared at the phone. Why would a man who supposedly lived across the country suddenly fly back? Because of an old photograph? There was only one way to find out. That evening, Melissa came home earlier than usual. She walked into the kitchen and saw me sitting at the table. She stopped. What happened? David called me. Her face went pale. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse her. I simply placed the photograph on the table. She stared at it. For several seconds, she said nothing. Then she sat down. Daniel, what happened that day? She rubbed her hands together. I wanted to tell you. When? I don't know. 12 years. She looked down. Yes. I felt anger rising, but I kept my voice steady. What's in the storage unit? Her eyes filled with tears. You went there? No. Then how do you know about it? I found the records. She closed her eyes. For a moment, I thought she would finally tell me everything. Instead, she whispered I was trying to protect you. From what? She didn't answer. I stood up. Melissa, whatever is inside that unit has been hidden for 12 years. I know. And you expect me to believe this was for my protection? She looked at me. I was afraid you'd leave. That sentence stopped me. Why? She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Before she could answer, someone knocked on the front door. 3 slow knocks. Melissa froze. I walked toward the hallway. She grabbed my arm. Don't. I looked at her. Who is it? She whispered one name. David. I opened the door. David stood on the porch with a small suitcase. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Serious. He looked at Melissa, then at me. I'm sorry, he said. For what? He swallowed. For waiting 12 years to come back. Melissa started crying. I turned toward her. What is going on? David stepped inside. He placed a small envelope on the table. There's something you need to know about that day. I opened it. Inside was a hospital photograph. A newborn baby. My hands began to shake. I looked at David. Then Melissa. Who is this? Neither answered. Then David whispered, your daughter. I couldn't breathe. My daughter? I looked at Melissa. We had only ever had Ava. Or at least, that's what ID believed. Melissa covered her face with both hands. And suddenly I understood why she had kept that key hidden for 12 years. But I still didn't know the most important question. Why had my wife hidden the existence of our own child from me? I couldn't speak. I stared at the photograph again. A newborn baby. Tiny hands. A white hospital blanket. And beneath the photograph was a date. October 15th, 2014. One day after the photograph of Melissa and David outside the brick building. I looked at Melissa. Who is she? Melissa was crying now. She was your daughter. The words felt unreal. My daughter? She nodded. Her name was Lily. I sat down slowly. For 12 years, ID believed Ava was our only child. ID never known there had been another baby. Where is she? Melissa looked at David. He stepped forward. She survived. My head snapped toward him. What? She survived, Daniel. Then where is she? Melissa wiped her eyes. She was born with a serious heart condition. The doctors told us she might not live long. I stared at her. And you didn't tell me? I tried. When? Before she was born. I shook my head. No, that's not possible. Melissa looked directly at me. You were in Texas. I remembered. In October 2014. ID been working on a major electrical project near Houston. ID been away for almost 3 weeks. Melissa had called me one night. She told me Shed had a miscarriage. I remembered sitting alone in a hotel room, unable to breathe. I'd flown home immediately. She had been devastated. Or so I thought. You told me we lost the baby, I whispered. I know. Why? She couldn't answer. David finally spoke. Because Lily wasn't supposed to be there. I looked at him. What does that mean? He took a deep breath. Melissa had been receiving treatment for a serious medical problem. The pregnancy was dangerous. The doctors warned her that carrying the baby could put her life at risk. I looked at my wife. Why didn't you tell me? Because I was scared. That isn't an answer. She looked down. I thought you would choose me. My chest tightened. You thought I'd choose between you and our baby? She started crying. I thought you'd blame me. I stood up. I would have helped you. I know. No, Melissa. You don't know. My voice cracked. You took 12 years from me. She nodded through tears. I know. David placed another document on the table. It was from the hospital. Lily had survived her birth, but she needed immediate treatment. She was transferred to a children's hospital, David explained. I looked at him. And then? Melissa whispered she was adopted. The room went silent. I stared at her. You gave away our daughter? No. She shook her head quickly. I didn't know what else to do. You didn't know what else to do? I was sick. You were thousands of miles away. I was terrified. I walked toward the window. Outside, Ava was sitting on the front steps. She had no idea that her entire understanding of our family was about to change. I turned back. Where's Lily now? David reached into his suitcase. He pulled out another folder. We found her. My heart stopped. You found her? 3 months ago. How? David looked at Melissa. She never stopped looking. I looked at my wife. For the first time that night, I saw something besides fear in her eyes. Regret. Real regret. She lives in Charlotte, Melissa whispered. She's 21. I felt dizzy. Does she know about me? Melissa shook her head. Not yet. I closed my eyes. 21 years old. My daughter had spent her entire life believing another family was her family, and I had spent 12 years believing she never existed. Then David said something that changed everything again. There's one more thing. I opened my eyes. What? He looked at me carefully. Lily has the same heart condition she was born with. I felt the air leave the room. How serious? She needs surgery. Melissa covered her face. We've been trying to contact her doctors. I looked at the folder, then at the key sitting on the table. Suddenly, I understood what the storage unit contained. Not money, not another relationship. A history, documents, photographs, letters, everything. Melissa had hidden because she was afraid the truth would destroy us. But the truth was already here, sitting in our living room. And somewhere in Charlotte, my 21-year-old daughter was waiting for a father. She didn't even know she had. I picked up my phone. I want to meet her. Melissa looked at me. Daniel, I don't know what happens to our marriage after this. She lowered her eyes. But before we decide anything, I looked at the hospital photograph one more time. I want my daughter to know that I never abandoned her. The next morning, I drove to Charlotte alone. Melissa wanted to come with me. I told her no. Not because I hated her. Because I needed to meet Lily without carrying 21 years of unanswered questions into that first conversation. David gave me the address. It was a small townhouse in a quiet neighborhood. I sat outside for almost 10 minutes before I finally got out of the car. My hands were shaking. I had imagined meeting my daughter 100 different ways. None of them prepared me for this. I knocked. A young woman opened the door. She had dark brown hair and green eyes. For a second, neither of us spoke. Then she looked at me. Can I help you? I swallowed. My name is Daniel Carter. Her expression changed. Why are you here? I looked at her face. There was something familiar about it. Something I couldn't explain. I think I'm your father. She didn't move. The silence between us felt enormous. Finally, she whispered, that's not funny. I know. My parents told me my biological father didn't want me. My chest tightened. I never knew you existed. She stared at me. You didn't? No. She looked away. Then she closed the door halfway. I think you should leave. I nodded. I understand. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old photograph. I didn't come here to take anything from you. I held it out. I just wanted you to know that if I'd known about you, I would have come. She looked at the photograph. Her eyes filled with tears. Who is that? Your mother. She stared at the picture for several seconds. Then she opened the door again. Come inside. We talked for almost 3 hours. Lily told me about the family who raised her. They had loved her. They had never treated her badly. That was important to me. I didn't want to destroy the family that had given her a childhood. I only wanted the truth. She showed me photographs from when she was little. School pictures, birthday parties, graduation. I recognized nothing. Yet somehow, everything felt familiar. Then she asked the question I'd been afraid of. Why didn't you look for me? I told her the truth. I thought you had died. She looked down. My mother told me you knew. I shook my head. She told me you never survived. Lily's eyes filled with tears. For the first time, I realized we had both been victims of the same secret. She had grown up believing her biological father didn't want her. ID spent 12 years believing my daughter was dead. And Melissa had carried the truth alone. That didn't excuse what she had done, but it finally explained it. When I returned home that evening, Melissa was waiting. She stood in the kitchen. Did you meet her? I nodded. How did it go? She wants to see you. Melissa covered her mouth. She started crying. I didn't hug her. Not yet. There were still too many unanswered questions. Why did you keep looking for her? She wiped her eyes. Because I knew what I had done was wrong. Then why didn't you tell me? She looked at me. Because every year that passed made it harder. I understood that. But I couldn't forgive 21 years in one night. We need counseling, I said. She nodded. If that's what you want. It isn't about what I want anymore. I paused. It has to be about what's best for Lily and Ava. Melissa nodded again. 3 months later, Lily had surgery. I sat beside her hospital bed. This time, I wasn't across the country. I wasn't unaware. I was there. When she opened her eyes, she smiled weakly. Dad. I took her hand. I'm here. She squeezed my fingers. I know. Across the room, Ava was crying quietly. The two sisters had met for the first time that morning. They had different childhoods, different memories, different stories, but they had the same father. And somehow, after 21 years of secrets, my family was finally becoming honest. I still didn't know whether my marriage would survive. But for the first time, I wasn't trying to protect an old version of my life. I was building a new one. And the little brass key that had started everything was no longer a symbol of what my wife had hidden. It became a reminder that sometimes the truth doesn't destroy a family. Sometimes the truth is what finally gives a broken family a chance to heal. 6 months passed after Lily's surgery. She recovered slowly, but every week she became stronger. And every week, I got to know the daughter ID lost before I even knew she existed. We started with phone calls, then Sunday dinners, then ordinary things, movies, coffee, arguments about which football team was better, the kind of everyday moments I had imagined having with my children, but never knew I was missing. Ava and Lily became surprisingly close. One evening, I found them sitting on the living room floor, going through old family photographs. Lily held one picture for a long time. It was a photograph of Melissa when she was pregnant. She looked at me. Why didn't you know? I took a breath. Because your mother was afraid. Lily nodded. Are you angry with her? I thought about that question. I was. Are you now? I looked toward the kitchen, where Melissa was quietly making coffee. I'm still hurt. Lily nodded. I think that's different. She was right. Melissa and I started marriage counseling. The first few sessions were difficult. There were tears. There were uncomfortable silences. There were questions neither of us wanted to answer. Eventually, Melissa told me everything. The pregnancy, the medical complications, the fear, the decision to let Lily be adopted, and the reason she had hidden the truth from me. She had convinced herself that protecting me from the pain was an act of love. But hiding the truth had created a different kind of pain, a pain that lasted 21 years. I told her something I'll never forget. You didn't protect me from losing my daughter. She looked at me. You made sure I never got the chance to know her. She cried. I know. That was the beginning of forgiveness. Not forgetting. Not pretending it never happened. Just accepting that both of us had to live with the consequences. A year after I found the key, I returned to the storage facility. Unit 217 was almost empty. There were only a few boxes left. Old photographs, medical records, letters Melissa had written to Lily but never sent. I opened one. The first line said, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I want you to know I never stopped loving you. I folded the letter carefully. Then I placed it back. Some things belonged to Lily, not me. Before leaving, I looked around the little storage unit. For 12 years, Melissa had paid every month to keep a secret locked behind that door. Now the door was open, and there was nothing left to hide. Today, Lily is 22. She lives about an hour away. Ava is 17 and finishing high school. Melissa and I are still together. Our marriage isn't the same. Honestly, I'm glad. Because the marriage we had was built partly on things neither of us understood. The one we have now is built on honesty. It took a tiny brass key to teach me something I should have understood years ago. Secrets don't disappear because we hide them. They grow, they wait, and eventually, they find a way out. For me, that way out was a 16-year-old girl cleaning her mother's closet. She found a key. She asked one simple question. And that question led me to a daughter I thought I'd lost forever. Sometimes the truth breaks your heart. Sometimes it changes your entire life. But sometimes, it gives you back something you never knew you had lost. If you were in my position, would you forgive Melissa after discovering Shed Hidden, your child from you for 12 years? Tell me honestly in the comments. And if this story touched you, like the video, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more emotional stories about family, secrets, betrayal, and second chances.